Okay, so hello, Casimir. I'm Manuel. I'm captaining the ship, the mighty ship of practice today. Thanks for joining us. So I guess we can start right away. And my first question would be to for you to ask, for you to tell us something about where you are right now.
Sure, love to. Thank you, guys. So yeah, I'm in Brooklyn, Wellington, New Zealand. So Te Whanganui-a-Tara is our name, which is the Great Harbour of Tara. So we're obviously in Aotearoa, New Zealand, which those of you who don't know is in Polynesia, near the Southern Ocean. So as you can expect, where my house is, I'm a couple of minutes away from Rokawa Moana, or most people know it as Cook Strait, which is a very rough sea in the 40 parallels. So very windy, cold, not what you'd think of Polynesia,
Ah,
unfortunately.
okay, interesting. Oh, I had no idea. Okay, and so what do you do there?
Yeah, oh, that's a great question. So my job title is, although frankly it's a little bit made up, is Principal Behavioral Scientist.
Mhm.
So mainly did that for political reasons, because social
Okay.
science is not very in vogue at the moment. So I just started calling myself a behavioral scientist. But really, I'm really just looking at what people do and how they do things. So particularly for my job, I'm very focused on climate change, particularly with reference to the built environment. So I work for a publicly funded research institute called the Building Research Association. So, on behalf of New Zealand, we undertake research to help improve the built environment, essentially. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I've been leading a program of work around the transition to zero carbon for about the last 7 years. And we're very much focused on assisting the government, but also industry on trying to create zero carbon buildings and a zero carbon built environment.
All right. Okay, interesting. And so in this context, when did you first encounter practice theory?
Yeah, well, that's always a good question. So for me, I first thought about practice theory or learnt it was really kind of an undergraduate back when I was a young anthropologist and sociologist back at university. So for us, especially anthropology in New Zealand is very focused on, I guess you could say, a lot of French and German anthropology, particularly the
Mm.
university I went. So Pierre Bourdieu was very front and center of that kind of education, especially when you think about. So a lot of our postgraduate, we had in-depth theory courses where we read almost all of Bourdieu's works, right from the
Oh,
Algerians, Outline of Theory of Practice, Logic of Practice, through to Masculine Domination and others. And we also contrasted that with other kind of social theorists like Castriadis, Nigel Rappaport, and Michael Jackson, all the phenomenology ones. So for us, social practice, I think, has always been front and center of what we're trying to do. Because for me, anthropology is always about what people do and how they do things. So for us, it's been quite central. So I've taken that kind of throughout my career, but particularly for this particular work, we've kind of, I guess, moved on from that practice theory into other particular modes. But that was kind of the genesis of my coming to practice theory was definitely Bourdieu. And even to this day, I still kind of come back to him. We use him as a reference point to really kind of comprehend other forms of practice theory so I can kind of understand it as well.
mm. Okay. And so what attracted you to practice theory? Is there something beyond the doing of things, maybe?
Yeah, well, that's always a good question, isn't it? Because for me, I kind of like the multiplicity of practice theory, isn't it? You're looking at kind of embodiment. You're actually looking at the mere physicality of bodies. So for me, it's a very biosocial theory. When you think of
Mm.
Bourdieu's like hexis, for example, or the habitus, it could be, a very physical embodiment, but it also is about that socialized subjectivity, that embodiment that gets inculcated onto the body. So for me, it's looking at that system of how, the physical body is also connected to those wider social structures. So I'm very interested in how, for
Mm.
example, the capitals, or as we talk about it in later work that I can talk a bit about, the practice architectures kind of really enable or constrain human behaviors. So that's what I like about it. I like about the element of change, but also it allows you the language, I guess, and the perspective to think about how power and human action kind of intersect to enable I guess, understanding of the world. Because for me, when you look at a lot of different social theory, for example, phenomenology, it gives you a very deep understanding of intersubjectivity between how people might relate to each other. But then, it doesn't really do a good job of looking at politics, for example, or how people, or the interobjectivity, or how people might engage with non-human actors, for example. It's quite, I would argue, not so good, or a little slightly deficient to do those things, where I think practice theory allows you to kind of explore the human and non-human in ways that, can make sense of a very complex problem. So yeah, that's definitely one of the things I find attractive about it.
Yeah, that's great. Super interesting. So, I guess you mentioned a few, but what are the ideas you're working with currently?
Yeah, so the real big one, I guess, we've been thinking really around a lot around practice architectures. So I've been doing a
Mm,
large project that's been going on for around 6 years now. That's kind of slightly finishing, looking at kind of skills and vocational education around sustainability in construction. So I've been
mm,
trying to think about, why it doesn't happen. Shock horror. A lot of construction doesn't is not that sustainable. So what we're trying to think
mm,
about is within that skills landscape, because we identified that skills is particularly a key intervention point if we want to change the trajectory, obviously to address climate change. So for us, we're trying to think about how can we enable that to take place. So we've done some work, very qualitative assessment with apprentices and others who are actually physically on the ground to kind of understand their learning. So practice areas really enabled us to kind of think about, I guess, how they actually learn in reality rather than, book
mm,
learning. If you go to like apprentice schools or all those things, they'll tell you a particular mode of learning. But for us, it's trying to uncover, the invisible pathways of how they learn, who they might learn with. So, for example, um, there might be informal ways of learning that aren't formally recognized that we need to understand, but also the realities, for example, being an apprentice. For example, a lot of building
mm,
sites, sustainability is not really, prioritize, shall we say. It's just getting the job done as quickly as
mm,
possible. So it's trying to learn how students are trying to engage with these things within this constant struggle of power. So for us, we've been very drawn to practice architectures by Stephen Kemmis, and that's really
mhm,
because I guess the change element or the transformation element that Kemmis tries to do in his work, that for us is something that we're trying to do because we just don't want to describe and analyze this problem. We want to come up with a framework that's really going to support a wider, I guess, behavior change or system change within the sector to really do that. And that's something that we've been trying to do, is really think about how to change that. So we're doing that many ways. We're offering, really focusing on climate change literacy because that was one of the key things to do. So one of the first things we did is try to think up what are the key competencies that people in the sector need to do. So we looked at architects, designers, and builders and other construction trades to see. And so we got these competency profiles that we developed and road tested with industry. We've been working with the government on certain kind of micro credentials to help fill the gap. So the current curriculum doesn't focus on that. So we've been also talking to a lot of the polytechs by trying to fill in the gap. So we're trying to create like technical manuals to kind of make sure that the students have something to refer to help them on this journey. So we're really taking a very
mm,
systems view to kind of think about this transformation. But for us, practice theory, it gives us that, I guess, the tools and ability to really make real world change by giving us, I guess, an idea of where to look.
mm.
So I guess that's the beauty of
Yeah.
what we're trying to do with how we've evolved, I guess, practice theory, especially the practice architectures. It's a very useful framework to really help our work.
Mhm. Yeah,
Okay, so I'm
interesting.
going to take over. I'm momentarily a pirate, so I want to steal some of your best ideas. Um,
Oh no, do we really?
and therefore I'm kind of interested in what ideas. I mean, you've described a big landscape of
Hmm.
possibly concepts, practice architecture. Which ideas are you working with specifically now?
Particularly now, oh, that's a very good question. Um, I guess, well, I've got formed ideas and unformed ideas. I've got some very uninformed
I
ideas.
don't mind. Yeah.
I'm just trying to think about implementing, for example, a circular economy, for example. That's something I'm very focused on. And I think that has very similar challenges. But for me, I'm really trying to think through particularly what an economy means within a circular economy, particularly within a practice-based approach. For me, and that's something I'm just trying to get into grips with. I've just done some research in Finland and Germany and Belgium, and I'm just trying to I'm just doing the data analysis at the moment, but I haven't quite got there. But I guess these are some of the concepts I'm trying to think about, because Chemist has been useful, I guess, but I guess something I'm trying to think about, I haven't quite thought about, is I guess Shatsky has, arrangements and constellations. It's that large scale change and how the things get bundled together to evolve and make change over time. That's something that I guess we want to think more about, because I think practice architectures is quite good in identifying the different strata of different practices. But I guess for me, it's kind of, I guess, how these might change over time, as Bourdieu would say around social reproduction, how these kind of reproduced over time to, I guess, enable or change that kind of more systematic change over time. Because I think that project that I talked about when we looked at sustainable construction, that's still very at the kind of micro level. And what I'm trying to grapple with is how do we kind of, I guess, upsize it a bit so we get that more large scale transformational change. I think that's something we're really trying to grapple with, because and it always, we always talk about market solutions or regulations, but it's then how do we, I guess, create that coordinated change so these practices can accumulate over time to create that. And that's something we're really trying to grapple with, that we don't really know where we're going with this. But we're trying.
So now I've got my anthropologist hat on properly, and because I'm pretending to be an anthropologist, I'm interested in tribes and groups, and you've mentioned quite a lot. I mean, you're part of a building research world. You're part of kind of thinking about practice architectures. Where do you belong?
It's a very, very interesting question, and one I've struggled with for a long time. Not anthropological enough for anthropologists, and not sociological enough for sociologists.
Yeah.
But for me, I guess I always fall back on science, technology, and society, or STS. That's definitely a community I've been a part with for a long time. And I kind of just like, I guess for me, the problem nature of STS is very much interested in the problem. And we find that that's why a lot of our research, I guess I would describe it as more transdisciplinary rather than multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary. So I'm very much interested in problem-based research. And I guess you could argue that's very anthropological in orientation. But I guess for me, it's incorporating all the things we've learnt over time in STS when you think of human, non-human actors, and putting that into a cohesive kind of theoretical, methodological toolkit to kind of help understand where we are. Because I think for me, that's maybe a challenge, especially within contemporary research practice. When you look at sociology and anthropology, especially, there's a lot of very traditional mindsets and a lot of traditional anthropology that's almost a parody of what it is. When you think about the writing culture debates in the 80s and the 90s, and you look at ethnography now, I feel like it's missing some of its original purpose, where I think practice theory brings us back into that discussion where we're actually looking at what people do and why from that. So for me, practice theory is the solution to help with these things in some respects. So in terms of the tribe, it's a very intentional community, I guess you would say, isn't it, of like-minded individuals. There's many around the world that we, who provide inspiration for me, especially someone like Keen Birch has been quite instrumental about his work. Others like Dominic Boyer at Rice University, quite influential. And obviously Elizabeth Shove is very influential. I've got the Bible just down here with Stephen Guy that we always constantly read down here. So yeah, there's many people that we
But just before we move on, what do you see as the real difference between practice theory and science studies or actor network theory?
I think for me, practice theory provides a theoretical approach, but also kind of a methodology and a way of thinking, where I think for me, STS is very kind of eclectic. And I know there's particular groups within STS. I know some of it's very anthropological in orientation, but for me, it's harking back to that methodology and the interlinking of theory and method. That for me, I think is the missing glue. Because I think a lot of STS is a bit directionless in terms of methodology, and that pick and mix, almost, Uber postmodernist style, I think misses some of the nuance of things. So I think the toolkit of practice theory brings those together in a cohesive method and theoretical approach that means you can actually understand things better, and you actually have
Okay.
more of the tools to
Yeah.
bring things better. But yeah, that's my opinionated view. Might throw a few grenades out there to the STS community.
Great. So we're coming to an end, and we'd like a souvenir of our trip right to, I think this is possibly the furthest we've been on the boat. I'm not quite sure. But have you got a
Possibly.
souvenir that you could
Definitely
give us?
Oh yeah, I do. Hold on. I'm just going to got one for you. Just bear with me. So I got this one for you guys. So this is
Okay.
a mania. So this is a mythological Maori figure. So it's pretty much a kaitiaki or a guardian. So it's to ward off evil. It's to kind of help you in your quest when you're trying to do things. So it's a very important figure for us down this way. And it's as you can see, it's very fearsome, but it's there to help and support you despite what you think of it. So yeah, I think that's very important from this part of the world because you're nearly in Antarctica just about. So it will definitely be important to go into the future.
I mean, we've
Amazing.
got so many
Yeah.
challenges on our quest on the boat and navigation
Yeah.
and so on. So I think this is really, really useful. So thank you for
We're a
that.
nation of seafarers, so that's why it's very important.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And one final question. Now we've got our magic device. Where should we go next? Who would you like us to talk with?
Oh, definitely one place I would love to go is Beijing, China. So Yinji Gao,
Okay.
I think will be someone on the map to check out. Very interested to see how practice theory is used and thought about in China. I'm very interested in, obviously non-Western cultures, how they're interpreting and using practice theory. I think would be very interesting from my point of view.
Well, we'll see
never
what we
been
can
there.
do.
Yeah, no, it'd be interesting. You never know.
Great. Thanks
No,
ever so
absolutely.
much. And yeah, we'll be on our way.
Thank you for the opportunity. And again, thank you, Elizabeth, for the scholarship. It's been a nice thing to always dip into what you're doing and do. So keep it up. We really appreciate it, even though we can't always show it down here.
Thanks.
All right. I'll leave you guys to it.
Bye.
Kia ora. Ka kite.